Bionic Showdown, the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, a Fusion Patrol review. Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, and Jamie Summers, the Bionic Woman, are back again in this second reunion movie from 1989. In this attempt at a new series pilot, Rudy Wells has created a new Bionic Woman, Kate Mason, this time with an all-new type of bionics designed to repair muscular dystrophy. Jamie Summers is helping with her rehabilitation. Meanwhile, Steve is helping out with security at the World Unity Games, which the OSI is in charge of. If these games suffer a security problem, détente could be all but over between the US and the USSR. The World Unity Games are very much like the Olympics, only smaller, and are being held in a Canadian high school gymnasium. But these games couldn't come at a worse time. The powers that be are trying to shut down the OSI, or at least significantly reorganize it, and as Oscar Goldman's authority is diminished, he resigns in a fit of pique and becomes a security risk. Worse still, there's a break-in during a soiree filled with important dignitaries, which appears to have been committed by a bionic person. Could Steve, Jamie, or Kate be a traitor? Or has someone else finally developed bionic technology in the 17 years since Steve's accident? And why has the bionic villain kidnapped Oscar Goldman? All of this leads to the titular Bionic Showdown, in which Steve and Jamie have no meaningful part. On balance, I'd say this was a better film than the first reunion movie, but only just. Once again, the producers are attempting to make a pilot for a new Bionic series. Gone but not entirely forgotten is the new Bionic Man from the last movie, Michael Austin, Steve's son. Michael gets nothing more than a name check and is apparently in Florida and can't be bothered to come help. Considering how awful the weather in Washington, D.C. is in this movie, who can blame him? Kate's bionics are a new breed entirely. Her body, suffering from macular degeneration, has been augmented with thousands of bionic nerves, her bones reinforced with tough stuff, and has a computer brain implanted in her brain. It's a nice idea for a potential life-changing technology for people with disabilities, but would it really make for a superpowered secret agent? Just because her bones are reinforced wouldn't make much difference when her flesh is being torn off performing feats of bionic strength, and it also doesn't explain how she has bionic hearing or eyesight, complete with digital readouts. Kate is played by Sandra Bullock, who comes off as a very likable character on camera. I predict she might have a successful career in TV or perhaps even movies after this. The mystery about the unknown bionic agent is too obvious for words, with one of Oscar's high-placed right-hand men being named Devlin. You know he has to be, well, the devil of this story, basically. His origin is never revealed, but he could equally have been created by either another US intelligence agency or the Soviet Union. And that's another problem with this story. Set during détente, the story has aged poorly. While Russians as the evil bad guy stories are evergreen, stories from the end of the Soviet era during détente and to the fall of the wall are uncomfortable. The writers are trying to adapt to a new world where their go-to heavies aren't so bad, but they often project their frustrations into the writing, creating a trite storyline of rogue entities in the US and the USSR working together to prevent the US and the USSR from working together. Fortunately, that period in history didn't last long, and the Russians are back as reliable world villains. But it doesn't help this story. Consistent with the trend about this time, production has moved from Los Angeles to Toronto. This presents some weird story elements. The last movie wasn't just shot in LA, it was set in LA. Both Steve and Jamie had built lives for themselves there. Steve with his charter boat, Jamie with her counseling. Now, 2 years later, things are the same. But since Toronto can double for many cities, but not sunny, warm LA, everyone has moved back to Washington, D.C. Jamie has a house, and Steve is running his charter out of the docks of the Potomac River, apparently. I wonder if Steve sailed his boat through the Panama Canal or just bionically dragged it over land. Another bizarre twist, no doubt brought on by the change of production location, the World Unity Games are actually held in Toronto, and halfway through the film, the characters and action travel to Toronto for the games. Earlier, in Washington, Oscar is kidnapped. Later, in Toronto, Oscar is rescued. Did the bad guys transport him, or did the writers just botch the whole thing? Also, how is it even possible that the US government's OSI is conducting security for an event in Canada? Last time I checked, Canada was still a sovereign nation that probably has its own security. Possibly because of the newness of Canada's foray into production of the US TV shows. The stunt work and special effects are subpar. The blurring effect used for the bionic running makes it difficult to figure out what's going on, and the stunt doubles are so poorly disguised that at times you can't tell who they're supposed to be. This is, however, only a few years after Canada produced The Starlost, and it's a huge improvement on that. Keeping in their pattern of hiring the lesser James Bond movie composers, Marvin Hamlish has been replaced by Bill Conti. Unlike Hamlish's intrusive and ill-suited score, Conti has achieved an almost inaudible score. In fact, I probably wouldn't have noticed the movie had one if I hadn't been listening carefully, expecting another train wreck like the last film. I wonder if Michael Kamen will score the next Bionic movie. A through line in this story is Steve's attempt to ask Jamie to marry him, which constantly gets interrupted. The joke being that everyone, absolutely everyone, from the staff to the OSI, the CIA, the Russians, and of course even Jamie, all know Steve is trying to propose. Spoilers, she proposes to him and he accepts. Stay tuned for the Bionic nuptials.